I remember it was novel at first. It was kind of like, oh, this is kind of crazy. It's like
This is
open
wild.
the door
Yeah.
and it's like walking out into an oven. And then to the point where you're like, you're always like, do you smell burning hair? What is
Yeah.
that?
Oh, that's me. I'm on
Yeah,
fire just a little
that's
bit. Yeah.
yeah, the novelty wore off pretty quickly. Yeah, so
I moved here from Phoenix, and it's 100 plus for more than 120 days every summer. And I did that. I did that insanity for 12 or 13 years, and I just couldn't anymore.
a handful of like really new kind of exciting projects that came across our board, kind of a mix of both retail and residential. So it's
Outstanding.
exciting.
Anything you can expand upon, or is it still cloak and dagger?
I off camera, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
What?
on camera, the other are just it's a handful of residential and park models and that kind of thing, but
Yeah,
other music like music venues.
cool,
So
man. That's really fun.
yeah,
We've kind of had an uptick suddenly since we last spoke on some residential stuff and municipal, strangely. So we're getting a lot of requests for municipal stuff, and we're certainly not going to say no. So it's
totally.
fun. It's a little different. Yeah, it's cool.
It's
So
awesome.
let me get the intro here, and we'll jump back into this thing. We got the trial run out of the way because because this guy doesn't know how to hit record.
That's right.
That's fun. Welcome to the Tiny House Experts Talk Show. I am your host today, Damon, with the Tiny House Experts here at Trailer Made Custom Trailers, and I have Jonathan White from Nook Tiny Homes with me today. We're going to talk a little bit, act silly, and do what tiny house people do. We're going to talk each other's faces off and hope you listen in. So without further ado, my friend Jonathan, please take it away. How are you?
Doing good. It's really good to see you again.
You
It's
too.
been a while since your last visit out here. So
It has. The weather's catching up to summer now, so it's probably going to be a while before you see me in Texas.
yeah, I know. I was sitting at kind of in a sweltering production facility here, and was talking to one of our clients in Colorado, and he said, "Yeah, we had a little bit of snow earlier," and I was, "Come on!" And I was like in a rolling sweat. So
We complain about. I mean, we'll bitch about 52% humidity here because that's a lot for what we're used to. I go down there and your gills kind of grow back in. I grew up in Missouri on the Mississippi River, where it's just as humid as it is in central and south central Texas. And man alive, I remember putting up a tiny house, I think circa 2015 in Austin at a warehouse where we were picking up some parts, and we utilized that parking lot to frame it up. It was a steel frame project, and we then had to jump in the truck and drive it to Tulsa, I think. And it was an October day, and it was 96 degrees that day, and it was over 90% humidity. I mean,
yeah,
Indian summer was it was just
rough.
it was intense. Natalie and I both looked like wet rats at the end of that day, man. It was just miserable. And then we had to drive 6 or 7 hours up to Oklahoma. So fun day in the sweltering summer, end of summer, one last blast furnace from Mother Nature in Austin, Texas.
When I
No,
moved here,
no thanks. I'll see you in November.
I moved here from North Carolina. I was here the summer. We had, I don't know, it was either 60 or 90 days of triple digit temperatures, and I remember it was novel at first. It was kind of like, oh, this is kind of crazy. It's like
This is
open
wild.
the door
Yeah.
and it's like walking out into an oven, and then to the point where you're like, you're always like, do you smell burning hair? What is
Yeah.
that?
Oh, that's me. I'm on
Yeah,
fire just a little
that's
bit. Yeah.
yeah. The novelty wore off pretty quickly. Yeah, so
I moved here from Phoenix, and it's 100 plus for more than 120 days every summer. And I did that insanity for 12 or 13 years, and I just couldn't anymore. I like the dry, but everybody that says, "Oh, it's the dry heat," oh, you don't notice. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
they've
Sitting
never
it's dry
stood in
when you're sitting
downtown Arizona.
into a broiler. Yeah, it's still dry. It's just
Yeah, that's right. My air fryer gets up to like 400. It's
yeah.
dry. But it makes toast, kind of like downtown Phoenix in July.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk a little bit about Nook Tiny Homes and kind of how your your trail, your story led to starting Nook. I knew you in a past life from Jay White Design and Build, and you were associated with Extreme Makeover Home Edition, the television show, and in everybody's living room on weeknight television on major networks, to Jay White Design and Build, then on to Nook Tiny Homes, and where you go next.
Okay. Well, it is, as you mentioned, it's kind of a long, circuitous kind of route. I started out, I was out in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I had a this is kind of before it became famous, a la Netflix. But yeah, I had a architecture practice out there that I ran with a good friend of mine. And during the last time the housing market had kind of cycled, you know, we were both sitting there, you know, in a market that didn't have a primary housing component. We're both kind of like, oh, whose digits are we gonna eat first? You know,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, good grief. Like around the same time Extreme Makeover came to town. There was an airman who had Gulf War syndrome. Anyhow, we were asked on behalf of the builder to help him for our firm to kind of donate and provide a design for that we developed in conjunction with the art director.
Okay.
And then he asked me to help build. And so after it was a very hairy kind of construction week, very challenging, agricultural kind of wet area, ag, you know, sky tracks and lulls and 4-wheel drive forklifts were getting buried in the mud. I mean, it was really, it was a grind. But at the end of it, we were able to kind of successfully get everything completed. And the show had said, hey, why don't you come work for us as a project manager? And initially I turned them down for a full-time role. And I worked on a couple, sort of a hired gun for a couple episodes, a little more challenging or larger in scope. Another year passed, things hadn't gotten any better. And they offered again.
Yeah.
And at that point I said, yeah, I'll
sweeten the offer, maybe.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And so, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And so it was, and so we kind of traveled the US, started on the East Coast, worked our way kind of eventually out to Texas, where we built a home for a Fort Hood soldier. And we were kind of partnered up with a number of number of organizations and a big build on your lot builder here in Texas. And their COO asked, you ever thought about coming to Texas? And I told him, I was like, Nashville and Austin are two areas that I seriously would consider leaving the coast to come to. Also, if I want to keep my digits, you know, not have to get cannibalized. And so,
Sure.
So came to Austin and worked for them for 4 years. And eventually I just went out on my own after 4 years.
I see.
And I had said, you know, hey, I'm not coming to Texas to be a super for you guys. And it was things that just kind of where things sort of headed. And so I ended up going back out on my own, and immediately through some of my kind of connections in the production world, ended up starting to do some of these really kind of creative cabins and seasonal camps, but essentially tiny homes.
Sure.
Up in the mountains of kind of New York and Vermont, kind of green mountains of Vermont, upstate New York. And that really creative kind of fun homes, straddling waterfalls and floating on ponds and things like that. Came back to Central Texas, and not long after that, I had my general contracting company, which Jay White, you know, first initial last name, but that was also when people referred to me on the radios on Makeover, when they're trying to get hold of me, like, where's Jay White? You know, how do we get, you know,
I remember you saying get Jay White. You said you had a lot of Jonathans. You had a couple of different Jonathans or Johns, and
it's
Jay White became your separator, huh?
Jay White.
Jay White.
So set up the general contracting company and did some opened some restaurants. But Tiny House Nation came to Central Texas, and they, you know, I had some colleagues that were kind of on the crew there, and they said, hey, we should talk to Jonathan. You know, he understands kind of getting things built quickly. And
he's in the area.
Right. And so we did that. That's how you and I met. Talking about the trailer order and kind of when it was coming, and you know, and it was this, you know, rare, exquisite 10-foot trailer, which now is kind of commonplace for all of us. It's almost more rare to do a standard width.
It has become that way, I think, hasn't it? I looked out on our yard. We had a couple of high school tours through here yesterday, a morning group and an afternoon group from an alternative high school that focuses on trades.
That's
And
awesome.
it was really cool. Like the kids, first of all, it was about 50-50 boys and girls, you know, all high school age, freshmen through seniors. And their liberal arts curriculum is not necessarily what takes center focus. They work at their own pace in their you know, core curriculum, but their selected trades or skills that they've assigned, that they've enrolled in to learn, you know, drafting or CAD or Premiere Pro video editing, you know, something like that. And they can go learn these skills, have 3 or 4 years of certifiable, you know, certification level training before they get out of high school. And I was just blown away by that. And what I noticed was the kids, mostly the ones asking questions and kind of immersing themselves in the tiny houses that we showed them yesterday, and, you know, looking around and seeing what they were going to do with it next. And it was almost exclusively the girls, the female students. Yeah. They were asking, how much can a welder make? You know, I took a welding class. I loved it. Do you guys hire girl welders? I pointed at Kelly, who I said a minute ago was my production assistant for the day. She hired on as an apprentice welder, and said, I won't repeat exactly what she said. She said, I can run the out of a TikTok account for this company, because that's the one value I can bring as a millennial to your team.
That's awesome.
I mean, she owned it too. She said, I'm a millennial, and you know, I might be a kind of a green pea welder, but she says, I'm a pretty badass TikToker, I'll tell you that. And I was like, you know what, you're hired, because I don't have a TikTok and I don't have any more bandwidth. So please come on. And it was interesting to see that the kids were really excited about, you know, can I make a career in this? You know, can I come work for you? Or are there other companies that do what you do? What kind of skills are they looking for? And I have absolutely no idea now why this came up and how that ties to what you were saying about Tiny House Nation and this exquisite 10-foot wide trailer. But I noticed yesterday with the kids coming through that they were asking a lot of questions. And I think the wrap up was there was almost nothing in the yard or on display or in fabrication or paint or finish or build or anywhere that was less than 10 feet wide.
Yeah. For sure.
One or two, maybe just outliers, but yeah, almost everything that we touch now is 10 to 12. And on the occasion now we're getting the 14-foot requests.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, we've Americanized it.
Yeah, seeing the same thing. And it, you know, it was also, you know, everyone used to approach us kind of like with kind of doing the mental math of, okay, this is what my tiny home is going to cost. This is what I'm going to need to spend for a tow vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then we'd start talking about the use of the space, you know, the width, the dimensions, you know, 10-foot versus 8.5-foot frequency of movement. And it's like, unless you're really moving this as frequently as a travel trailer, go ahead and go wider and just pay someone to move it. You know,
we tell people the same thing. I'm like, you know, this is, you know, if $100,000 is stiff for a tiny home, you're right, it is. Now you got to double down on that for a truck to move it, and now you have a $200,000 tiny home budget because you need a dually or something to move the thing around with. And I ask people, level with yourselves and ask the deep question: how much am I really going to move this around? Christian and Alexis from Tiny House Expedition are the exception, not the rule. You know, when I first met them, their tiny house had over 15,000 miles on it. And I think the last time I saw them, it was over 60,000 miles. So that is an exception, certainly not the norm or the rule, because most people, I think you would agree, unless you tell me otherwise, when they buy a tiny home, they're not going to move it maybe a few times in its life.
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
Right. I know last time you and I had some discussions about this. I really think that our numbers, if I was being very charitable, I'd say it would be 20% that move it frequently. I think we're really probably closer to 10 to 15%.
I'd fall in that 10% category. I'd say 10% are going to move them around on any sort of regularity basis, you know, and those are your nurse travelers or your teachers that have a contract for 1 year or 6 months or something like that. Military, yeah, good point. Evolution of the tiny house, the tiny home, is, you know, this current iteration of it and its popularity is a bigger home, more like a park model recreational vehicle, about 350 to 400 square feet without lofts is kind of what we're seeing, you know, right down Main Street. There's a new project that we're looking at that are HUD size homes, mobile home replacements. These developers came in and bought some old mobile home parks and cleared all the old stuff out, you know, the 60s and 70s era single wide trailers. They've dragged those out, you know, upgraded the infrastructure, and now they're looking for 14 by 60 tiny home looking units to regentrify those parks with. And that's more what I see coming down the pipe in the future. We've talked a lot about what, you know, we obviously service the DIY market probably more than anyone, because the same thing that we sell to, you know, commercial builders, professionals like you, is available to a novice do-it-yourselfer, and they have, you know, our support to help them kind of get through the process and maybe build that sweat equity. But I feel like I'm one of those conduits for the kids or the DIYers that are out there going, what should I build? I'm looking at an 8 by 24. And I'm like, that was a pretty popular size 5 to 7 years ago. But today, you know, the norm is a bit different. It's more like a 10 by 24. That's probably the smallest thing that I would even recommend to somebody that called in today. You know, if you're not going to move this thing with any regular intent, then don't build it to move, build it to live.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
We actually, as part of that, I know we talked about some of our, for the first time, we're going to be offering kind of standardized models. And, you know, really it's the 12 foot, the 16 foot and the 24 are going to be the just really based around those people that want to move them frequently. Everything else we're actually upsizing to 10-foot widths because it's just from a livability standpoint, use. And also, you know, there's that other part of it where I tell people, unless you are, you know, hell bent on moving your home yourself, the only thing more kind of insulting than getting into a car accident with your tiny home in tow is probably rendering yourself homeless at the same time.
Oh, wouldn't that be just
that's what, and it's like, get a contract driver who carries insurance that, you know, because also a lot of insurance carriers will be very happy to disallow coverage, you know.
100%.
So that's where, you know, I'm a big fan of, you know, using contract drivers whenever possible because they're a great resource. They move large loads all the time. And
they're well insured, they're equipped, they're experienced, and I'm with you 100%.
Your travel can be so much more kind of enjoyable. You can just chase it there or tell them you're going to meet them at the site. Yeah. Wind your way there and just
we'll catch up. You keep going. We're going to stop and see some sights along the way or whatever, right? We'll stop at Buc-ee's and get a t-shirt.
Right. Exactly.
Because the 18-wheeler can't pull in there hauling a tiny house. You spoke about a kind of a standardized model a minute ago. I want to touch on that. That's I saw the 12-foot in your shop when I was in Austin last. That's called the Rome, correct?
Rome. Correct.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that project. What's going on around the Rome? It's a do-all, can-all sort of tiny house design, I gather.
It is. And we've gotten a lot of really interesting response, including some of the large kind of iconic manufacturers have reached out to us like, what are you guys doing? What's happening over here? And what it really is it's a response to the fact that a lot of people get smaller travel trailers intending to travel a lot. You know, it's like, you know, I'm going to get this, you know, this Airstream Bambi, or I'm going to get whatever this small trailer is, this Jayco, and I'm going to take it out. We're going to take it out every other weekend. We're going to become outdoors people, you know, and they use it the first year. That's right. It's in the storage, you know, it has to go to the storage lot, and it becomes like it becomes an issue. And you know, we had a number of people keep approaching us about, you know, with travel trailers saying, can you make this more feel more like one of your tiny homes, more residential.
Yeah.
And even people's, beautiful Airstreams, people wanting to gut them and convert them and make them more house-like, make them more residential.
Less airplane fuselage like. They're pretty Spartan inside, even the nice ones. And please, Airstream fans, don't think I'm bagging on you. It's not my cup of tea, but there's a lid for every pot. I'm just not an Airstream guy, but literally walking in a few of them that were well into the 6-figure price tag, it looked like a half-built airplane inside.
Sure.
It's how it felt to me, and that would be tough to want to stay in for any extended period of time. For me personally, I need a little softer touch, and some earth tones, and maybe some curtains and some upholstery, for crying out loud. I could stand that.
So after getting that much feedback, that there was we had a project that was not trailer based. It was actually, we built it, and it was the same size of the room, 8 by 12.
Mm-hmm.
We're standing inside it, and we're kind of looking at each other like, now, if you could put this on a mobile platform and you could retain these dimensions and you could sleep 2, maybe 3 people, and you had everything that you would need in kind of an efficiency space, or almost like a guest house.
Sure.
That would be the giant killer, and
it would.
And the feedback has been absolutely phenomenal. People, first of all, they get into it and they're all crouched over, and I'm like, and then they stand up and they're like, oh yeah, we can stand upright. It's not, most travel trailers have that curved kind of carapace. And,
yeah.
We use, and our thought is that you can take it on trips. You can move it all the time if you want to,
mm-hmm.
but when you're not taking it on those trips, you can have it in your side yard, your backyard, your driveway. It is, the experience in it is far more residential. It's more home-like.
Right.
It is, a travel trailer is a trailer.
Yep.
That you travel in.
That's right.
And the Roam is, we kind of jokingly internally say, hey, the Roam is home. It's an extension of your house that, and again, also you can commoditize, short-term rent it.
Yeah.
You're not having to overcome people's objections to staying in a trailer. You have guests, your in-laws are going to hate you that much less, because you're not putting them in the travel trailer. You're putting them in something that feels a lot like.
That's right. They're at the same address, right? They're not across town at the Super 8.
Right.
And so, there was a point you said just a moment ago, I want to bring back up for a second. You talked about monetization of this. So that's because that kind of ties into what we were speaking about, how the developer business model is kind of coming to light now. It's growing. The interest in the resources, the money, and the investment capital is starting to flow into the tiny house industry and move it into that, I guess, that next level up stage. So for anybody that might be listening that's considering an investment opportunity and wants to maybe buy a tiny house on or off wheels, you build them both ways. We do too. It's one of the problems with our branding. When I said trailer made 12 years ago, I had no idea that we would be squarely, front and center in the tiny house industry a decade later. I would have branded differently had I known better, but here we are. So that's why, 14 times a day I say tiny house experts, and we've noticed that a lot of people our age, people that are maybe starting to look at how can I create passive income for retirement years or something like that, and they're calling us and they're saying, hey, my wife and I, we're approaching our 50s, we've got some cash, we've been looking at tiny houses, and we've got some land, tell us more. So they're in Austin. Obviously it's a tourist destination. We're in the Four Corners area, ski town, Silverton, Ouray, Durango. So there's plenty of places you can plop one of these things down and make rental income per night or per weekend or per week. What's that market look like in Austin? Because I'm sure you explore it.
Very similar. It's, Austin as a destination.
Yeah.
Just because, music, food, sports, you name it. You've got South by Southwest, ACL, a lot of kind of like music festivals and technology.
Are you a music festival guy?
I would if I wasn't working all the time.
You're you're a tiny house guy. You don't get to be both.
When I moved to Austin, I'm like, I'm live music. I'm gonna get to go out. And I moved here from Memorial Day weekend. I had that Monday off. I went to work that Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think I with the exception of a handful of vacations, and this is a decade ago, with the exception of a handful of vacations, I've been full time since. You know, I just that's just and because demand has been there and I've been kind of sprinting to keep up with it, not always successfully, but
I understand. I really do. My brother just saw unrelated, but he lives in Waco and they drive to Austin quite a bit for music. His office is in Austin, so he's there all the time. But they saw Tedeschi Trucks Band. The
yes,
I think that was at South by Southwest last night, wasn't it? Or Sunday rather?
I think so.
Yeah, he told me he saw me, and I'd never heard him, and he sent me a few of their songs, like where he was, videoing them from the audience, and I'm like, man, that's a good show. I'd like to see that. So try and catch him next time.
Yeah, I have missed out on a lot of good shows. I am oddly enough, our shop is as the crow flies about less than a mile from Willie Nelson's Luck Ranch.
Oh wow, yeah.
My house. I live we triangulated between my house, the shop, and the ranch, all within a 2-3 mile radius, which is cool. The wind blows the right way. You can when he's got something going on there, you hear some music come across the hills, which is pretty special.
That's fun. Probably smell a little Willie's Reserve in the air too. Yeah, right. It's not in Texas. That's only in Colorado. Willie wouldn't do that in Texas. Willie only does that when he's in Colorado, I think.
No, of course not.
So, what's the average? Let's take a 20-foot Roam, an 8x20 Roam on wheels. What would a potential investor that owned that and set it next to their house, maybe, or out on the back of their lot where it's out of the way and the guests have seclusion and so do the homeowners, but it's still close enough to feel a little bit more B&B. What's that rate a night look like?
It's a good question. It depends on where it is. I was talking to one of our team members recently about some metrics out here, and it was like averaged across all products, right? High end all the way out to you're averaging somewhere in the $130 to $150 a night.
Yeah,
that's across all products.
Sure,
from luxury to Spartan.
Sure,
and so you're $150 a night, and if you conservatively rent it 50% of the time, it's paid off in 2 years.
It's pretty solid way to get some passive income in your pocket, isn't it?
For sure. And then if you do finance and the amortization of that, a couple rentals per month has paid your note.
Yeah, it's not really hard to find yourself cash flow positive on a $60 to $120, $140,000 real estate investment in a tiny house. Whether it's attached to dirt permanently or not, it is a real estate investment because you're banking that investment in the realm of tourism, and that industry needs heads and beds to generate revenue. And you can't put it in Fargo, North Dakota, and say, here's our tiny house B&B. You can come anytime you want. You might get.
Yeah. What is interesting is that I have heard, and this is both anecdotally, locally, but also kind of nationwide, is that because there's been such a saturation in the Airbnb and short-term rental market, with kind of everyone and the mom having a studio or garage apartment or extra.
That's right.
The differentiators end up being somewhere remote for couples, a tiny house, something that's unique, a tree house.
Yeah, an experience, right?
Right.
That's the difference maker. And from Fleabag to 5-star, a hotel room's a hotel room, right? And some are $50 a night and some are 500 and up a night. But the basic premise is still the same. You're going to get in an elevator, you're going to go to your room, you're going to unlock the door, you're going to dump everything out on the floor. You're not going to have any necessarily lingering experience to talk about later on that trip. It's just like, oh, the hotel was okay, or the hotel stunk, or the bed sucked, or the pillows were awesome. That's about as far as your impression from that stay is going to be. As with a tiny house, like I think 2017 was the first time I actually spent a night, and I spent a weekend in a tiny, real close to here. We were down in Uray, and we were out 4-wheeling. We were jeeping for our, I don't know, it was close to 1st of October. So snow started falling suddenly. We got kind of snowed in.
Right.
A big late fall storm comes in and dumps about a foot on us. So nobody's going anywhere, and we're stuck in a tiny house. And it was the coolest. Like it was so much fun. We could have stayed. There was a hotel in the front of the property, but they had 8 or 10 of these little tiny house cabins back behind the property along the river's edge. So we were just sitting out on the back of the porch and along the riverside, because it wasn't frozen yet, but there was giant snowflakes, silver dollar size snowflakes falling. And I mean, it looked like it should have been a movie about a tiny house, because big snow's falling, river's running, and here you are in this cute little cabin, and it's just the two of you. It was really, really cool. And I couldn't describe the last 10 times I stayed in a hotel room and tell you anything remarkable about any of it, but I remember that. So I think, if you take your average at 150 and you add the experience benefit value to that, Wicasa here gets anywhere from 150 to 250 a night, depending on peak or off peak in the season. And they're at the base of Estes Park, or at the, Rocky Mountain National Park. So that's a draw for them. And peak season is like now to September. So it's 200 and up a night to stay in most of the tiny homes on their property this time of year.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Yeah. So, we're looking like about 6 minutes away from running out here. I'll cut some of this stuff out, but I wanted to ask you, for our next round, I'll do another probably 10 or 15 minutes with you, but I want to ask what are 2 things that you think every tiny houser should know? Good, two great things, and then 2 things that that they should maybe steer clear of, or what might change their mind to not jump in that. So
I get it. We had that. It's funny we were talking about kind of not regurgitating, but kind of stay. We had that event this past weekend. It was called Founders. It wasn't this past weekend, the weekend before. It's called Founders Day. It was kind of like a combination of farmers market meets state fair meets music festival on steroids. Like, it was insane, the volume of there were 130,000 people came through over 2 days.
Holy smokes, that's incredible.
Right. And so, and we had, I mean, for most of that, we had a line outside the Rome where people were stepping in and coming in, and we'd talking to them. And we have a head of sales who's actually out in Portland, and he flew in and he was here, and we were like kind of tagging off, as you got, 6 hours into it, 7 hours, you start hearing yourself kind of, you're just, the way you're describing, the home and all that is very similar. You're kind of hitting kind of the salient points and that kind of thing. But yeah, I started to feel like one of those, it's like I was sitting on someone's knee and someone's pulling a string in my back. And I was like,
yeah. You get punchy after a day of that, don't you?
Yeah. People were coming in, they'd step in, like, that's $5, please.
Right.
And then I said, just kidding.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Sorry. There's a $10 cover to get in, folks.
That's right.
And they're like, wait, what? Oh, I'm just kidding. The festival here in Colorado is coming up next month. It's at the end of June. Are you planning on attending that?
I don't know if we're going to be able to go to that, because we may be going to the Glamping Expo in October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I say that, then suddenly I come, barreling up the highway.
Well, June and October are far enough apart. You could make both of those events. And I'm not just pitching that because that's our hometown event, but it's a good show. It's always been a really good show. I think our smallest crowd has been 21K over 2 days. And yeah. So, I mean, I don't expect it to be any smaller this year. There's some vans that come in, there's some DIYs that come in, there's some bus conversions that come in. We're there obviously with a pretty big presence, and a lot of the regional builders drag in for it too. So there's usually 20 to 30 homes, and you would show well here.
Really?
The Denver market really likes the look of the Rome. They would like that. I've seen it, so I'm speaking on their behalf. I wouldn't You know, I wouldn't necessarily be the buyer's agent for.
Oh, we get out there and it's like wah 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 wah. Damon,
this
what did you
this is
do?
this is damn Damon's fault that I'm here watching crickets fight in the grass.
Good show for you.
Yeah, like, hey man,
Leg sweep.
so you'd probably never see me again.
Who just pushed me over their back? Yeah.
It's so well, you know, at your own discretion. Then don't blame me if it's a bust. But
When is it?
it's the 20. It's the last week in June, 28th and 9th, or 27th and 8th, something like that. It's Saturday, Sunday, and
We did
yeah, I
talk.
mean, yeah, let's talk about that. I'd love to get you up here for that if you could, and hell, we could showcase you next to our booths, and you know, make sure you're in a high traffic area and let everybody see one of your units, because they're nice, man. They're exquisite. You build quality homes. You use quality products in those homes, trailer made trailers, of course. I know that's a shameless plug on my part, but I don't give a damn. That's what I do for a living. So I build the best tiny house trailers in the world, and I'm proud of the people who use them, because I'm a little discriminatory about who I want to fly my flag next to, frankly. You know, if Nook didn't produce what Nook does, I don't know if we'd have the same friendship, man. I'd be like, hey, buddy, what's up?
Who? Hey,
Who?
I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
bad connection.
Yeah.
So, kudos to you for your work that you've done in the industry, man. You build great shit, and it speaks to the quality of the people that are in this industry still. There's been a shakeup, you know, through the pandemic. Probably just a seat of the pants guess, 30% of startup tiny home companies didn't survive. You know, and we felt that we lost some of that book of new business, you know, but it's always been cyclical. I think, you know, the business, it ebbs and flows. You know, people enter the market, people exit the industry at the same time. So for a builder that didn't make it over the hump, there's a new guy coming in that's going to, you know, and it's in, sorry, I got a pop-up window here. I got to figure out what to do with this. This is our first half of our meeting had to be processed, and it just popped right up and totally distracted me. But I think the market itself has probably taken the last shift that it's going to. I don't think there's really going to be another correction or a shakeout or anything like that where there's going to be the atrocities that we saw through the pandemic. You know, 30% of probably close to 1,000 nameplates. That's not a small number, you know. And I think you could probably tie that directly to statistics similar to the restaurant or hospitality industries, bars and grills, microbreweries. You know, when things are great, these are really, really popular businesses. And a lot of builders saw opportunity to get into the tiny house industry as a low hanging dollar, easy to jump up and grab, and maybe found that wasn't necessarily the case. and,
Tell people the ways are steep and unyielding.
That's a fact.
I mean, we took it directly in the face during COVID. I mean, we took it. It was highly unpleasant. And we had, I mean, we struggled. You know, it was really tough, and we had a few clients we kind of let down. We probably didn't treat we were doing the best we could with what we had.
Sure.
And also kind of at the same time be good stewards of our crew. I mean, that's where, you know, our crews and our crews families. So we were open, and then we're shutting the whole operation down and sending everyone home and getting everyone tested, and we're open again, then we're closed.
You struggle. It's trying to find that balance, isn't it, between keeping everybody healthy and keeping everybody fed and employed. Yeah. We went through that. We had might be too soon, but we had a banner year during COVID. Just a lot of opportunities came our way through FEMA contracts and you know, government SAM contracts at COVID testing facilities and things that kept us busy through that and growing even. So we thrived, strangely enough. We were on absolute life support 7 months into the pandemic prior to that. And
Oh
then
yeah.
all of a sudden, like May,
Mhm.
it just went bananas. I don't know what happened. But then it's like the light bulb went on and everybody said, tiny houses are the solution to COVID. And everybody started calling,
I'm
asking
out.
about tiny houses. I was like, man, this is fantastic. Um, so, you know, turning a really, really tragic time in our country, in the world, into, the best that you could hope for. And we were so fortunate to only have suffered as a business for that little length of time that we did, and then got back to work and even got busier and grew. We were pretty lucky like that, but
Awesome.
a lot of our colleagues were not. We got about one phone call every 3 or 4 days. Hey Damon, hey Tracy, hey Natalie, hey Cade. Just giving you guys a call. We're shutting it down. We can't do this anymore. It's just, 6 months and no calls, no emails, and nothing but bills rolling in. We're gonna go back to doing something else, and it's sad, but I understand it. And it's part of business. This is still a relatively new industry. We've collectively been in this together for a decade almost, and we we've seen a lot. I know I have, and I'm sure you have too. Austin is a hotbed for tiny homes on wheels and off wheels, and where it goes next, I think, kind of depends on the market. Yeah, who the buyer is, and that's something that I want to hear from you. We'll wrap this up because I know you've got a business to attend to, and I've got some other things waiting on me on the other side of this office door too. So um, uh, earlier I dropped a couple of questions on you. I said I wanted to hear what two things that you believe, from your perspective as a tiny house professional, what
Mhm.
two things do you think every would-be prospective tiny house owner, whether that's a builder, an investor, a DIYer, somebody who wants to live in it, what two things do you think, are the most positive two things that every tiny houser should know from your perspective? And then I want you to follow up with that, the two most negative things that you think they should also be aware of and try to stay clear of.
Deep, granular questions. I think from the two of the great questions, I think the two greatest things about our industry. I think one of those is the ability to take a lot more agency over your housing, your housing
Yeah.
situation, your housing environment, where you live. By having a home that one is most likely more financially attainable and manageable than
Yeah.
conventional structure. I know the point of entry here in the Austin market, including suburbs and outlying areas, is $500,000.
Same as Denver. Yeah. Colorado, all of Colorado is just like Austin. It's, yeah,
Right.
half million bucks is the ticket to ride to get on. If you want first class, it goes up.
If that was where I started when I was fortunate enough to build my first house when I was working for a developer, and if that was the point of entry, I never would have been able to, I never would have had a house.
Me either.
It out your the ability to the cost of entry outpaces the rates of pay for first time home buyers, and it really.
Oh, by exponents.
Yeah, and so that's where one of the two really great things um about it. I think the ability to have a flexibility in both your ownership, place of ownership, and where you go with it. There's a lot of, as odd as it sounds, everyone goes, "Oh, it's small and it's kind of limiting." It's actually you gain a lot of flexibility
That's a
um,
fact.
with your home, and that you would not have in a conventional kind of terrestrial site
Name
built.
name a couple of those. What are some of those flexibilities that come to mind for you?
I mean, and these are specific examples I can evoke. We have military clients that instead of the home was designed around everything they wanted and needed in a house,
Yeah.
uh, down to the specific appliance and brand and feature set. And
Perfect.
when they get restationed or reassigned, they just pack up,
Hook
move
up
to
and go, man. Yeah.
every base. Every base has an RV park.
Mhm.
Typically, they're in a more scenic portion of the base.
Yeah.
and the rates that are those parks charge are astronomically low compared to outside.
And probably covered by the service person's LES anyway.
Potentially, yeah. And so
Yeah.
it, that in that instance, that kind of that's it's a very, very specific but relevant example of that sort of flexibility of kind of, instead of having to arrange to sell your place, and depending on how the market's doing, is it soft, is it strong, then you're trying to buy a place somewhere else, and are you rolling one into the other, and are they contingent? Can you even afford to carry one while you're getting the other? That just goes out the window. You don't have to worry.
It does. To add to that, service people on the list, I want to include teachers. We have a couple of schools that actually started buying and building tiny homes and putting them on school owned land, to try and fill gaps for teachers.
Sure.
Tucson School District is one of those that comes to mind immediately. There's they started the school year this year with a full staff for the first time in like 10 or 12 years. And there's 20, as I recall, 20 tiny homes with teachers living on campus, and they get a crazy good deal on the rent, and it's part of their comp package. And they have an opportunity to, I think, take ownership of those after certain numbers of years of tenure. Yeah, so solving problems is what I see. That's the one thing I wanted to add to your list. The greatest thing about being in tiny houses is all of the different kinds of problems they can solve for so many different situations. And that's a topic for an entire discussion by itself. How many different problems can you solve with a tiny house? Too many. So we'll try that on the next one. But now those are both really good, taken and having, being empowered to kind of, I guess, just captain your own ship, right? That's what you said. And lower the bar a little bit, lower the threshold for entry of ownership for generations to come. I've got kids. I heard you say, you mentioned kids and you had a grandkid. So yours are probably close to mine, same age as mine, range in their mid-20s down to their late teens. And I don't have enough money saved to be able to help any of them, let alone all of them, with what would be required for a down payment in my hometown or your hometown of Austin or Denver. 20% down, that's $100,000. I got 3 kids. None of them have $100,000 saved or any desire to save $100,000 to put down on a house. So that doesn't work. But all of them have expressed an interest at one time or another in building their own tiny house and taking that with them to leave the nest, so to speak, and kind of get out on their own. Because, if you do it right, if you're in high school and you're in, let's say, a trades program, you probably talk the teacher into getting the other students to help you build that thing during the school year, right? And students, if you're listening, this is important. So take notes. This might be a way that you can take advantage of a lot of help and some guidance, and help your schoolmates learn how to build houses in the process. If you're considering this, take it to the school, do a tiny house kit. You're going to learn every stage of the build process, right? And your home potentially could be that finished product when you're done, and you didn't have to really hire anybody necessarily to help you. You get to do it as a school project. And, that ticket to admission might be sub $30,000.
Oh, sure.
Right. Depending, you might even be lucky enough to integrate that project into the school, and then get some local businesses to chip in for some supplies and materials. We have 503C education pricing for nonprofits. So they already buy a tiny house kit at a discounted price to be used as CTE education. And
Awesome.
The kids, like South U, so down in San Antonio, Construction Careers Academy. It's at Warren High School, Northside Independent School District, and they're pretty close. They're right there off Military Drive, so they're really, really close to the base. But the campus is enormous. Like it rivals the base, I think. But 560 kids enrolled in Construction Careers Academy, and they take about 2,500 apps a year and approve I think 130 or 140 apps out of that, 2,500 kids that apply every year. That program has a 3-year forward look for the kids. So sophomore year, they start design, CAD, permitting. The next year, their junior year, they're doing rough end, systems install, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Then their senior year, they're finishing everything with interior finishes, fixtures, appliances, and then they sell it at the end of the year. When it's done, that money reinvests itself back into the school program, and it's a self-perpetuating, self-functioning construction company that operates as a high school that's based in the trades. It's pretty awesome. And
you don't want to get me on my soapbox about how vocations and the teaching of vocations got watered out of our school systems, because
you can get on that soapbox, man. I brought you on the Tiny House Talk Show for a reason, so talk away. Seems like I've struck a nerve. Now we're getting into the good stuff here.
It's interesting because we look at how you define a skilled trade. And I remember growing up with, someone was a carpenter, but they were Swiss Army knives. They knew a little bit about every discipline, and they arguably in some cases those guys could do most of the individual disciplines better than
specific skilled tradespeople, huh?
These days. And at some point it became pejorative or negative for someone to go to Votech.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I remember that in high school. I
remember that stigma because I was a car kid. I was a motorhead, gearhead nerd, and I like going fast in cars. And I remember listening to the kids in school kind of talk shit about the auto mechanics kids, or body shop kids, and I was like, oh well, I don't want to go hang out over. I mean, it's where I should have been anyway, but I let that stigmatism
stigmatizing the grease monkey kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm less than because I got dirt under my nails, right?
Oh, and that's the problem with that, is that I was fortunate enough to have a father that was very, I didn't go to Votech, but by God, he made sure that I understood the cause and effect and how things work. And if we were if he was plumbing and brazing something in under the sink, I was down there next to him. And I have, we both lost an eyebrow, but and that sort of, aside from the actual learning of a vocation and a skill that is marketable beyond kind of a sea of degrees, it also empowers the individuals to give them agency over their own future. I know something.
I don't have to call somebody.
Right. I know something. I can change my own oil. Yeah. I can hammer out this dent in my fender, or by God, I can figure out how to do it.
That's right.
I think that we've seen.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that thank goodness we've had all of these kind of very, everyone kind of commoditizing and monetizing and getting their videos on, like getting videos on the YouTube.
Sure.
Instructional videos have started to empower people again to start wading back into the trades. What they don't realize is they're doing exactly what Votech was doing.
That's right.
Back in the day. Now it's cool because you're getting it on YouTube.
It's cool now because you're a homesteader.
Right.
Yeah, you're not just a redneck that knew how to work on cars or knew how to, fix an air conditioning.
Right. I think that anytime you empower someone to learn, and it doesn't matter what they're learning, there is value in it. We are 100%. Not everyone's destined to be a doctor, an attorney, a CPA.
No.
That's okay.
That's right. Okay. There's a my wife says it best. There's a lid for every pot.
100%. There's
a lid for every pot. We need ditch diggers, and we need doctors, we need lawyers, and we need auto mechanics. We need welders, we need roofers. I share this statistic often because it's terrifying to me, but it's very poignant to what we're discussing right here today. In the next 10 years, there's 250,000 welders retiring from the trade. they're older than us. They're in their 60s. They're in their late 50s to early 60s. And in the next 10 years, they're going to exit the workforce. And statistics show that there are an estimated 25,000 kids enrolled in CTE welding programs coming up behind them to take those positions. So it's 10% of the workforce is going to be replenished with our current generation of students.
And some
That's,
of those
that's terrifying.
Some of the welders that are badass and they're savants at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
they run circles around my paycheck.
Yeah. I
you know, good for them.
Yeah. I met a guy who built some nuclear power plant stuff.
Yeah.
And built some NASA stuff and built some stuff he can't talk about even. And he talked about some of his earning income potential in past years doing projects like that. And I was stunned. I was like, whoa, that's good money. I shared a moment ago about the high school kids that came through and how the ladies were asking all the important questions. The guys are over there in the corner jerking around, playing grab ass and, just being dumb boys. Right. The ladies were there like taking notes and hounding me. And do you hire female welders? And how long does it take to get my certifications? And how long would this take me to build this tiny house? And how much can I buy this for? And then what would it take me to finish it? I mean, they were planning.
I love it.
They're fact finding. They're drilling down. They're asking, the salty stuff. They want to know the good and the bad, like what's going on with these tiny houses and what's it going to take me to finish this. But right. I'm really, really hopeful for that because, we are very heavily involved at high school and post-secondary education level education for the trades. Taking a tiny house kit out to a high school in the middle of Kansas is a great way to teach them how to build a house without ever having to put them on a bus and take them out to a job site. Right. Yep. So that's caught on in a lot of school districts around the country. And we're grateful for that, not only because it's business for us, of course, but there's hope for the future of the trades to be saved by, kids that aren't going to be, they're not going to be shied away from like maybe you or I were by that stigma. Building a tiny house is cool. It's cool as shit. And the kids tell you, they're like, this is cool. I love these things. We're disruptive at events because all the kids want to come to our booth. They don't want to go see, they don't want to go see what the journeyman electrician guy is over there doing, oh, let's wire up a socket. And they're snoring in the background, texting each other. And they're like, oh, let's go see the tiny house guy again. I like those dudes.
Put the blue glue on the pipe. And then they're like,
yeah, they're like, yeah, I've seen my dad do this a bunch. Can we go? It's like they just walk away.
I've seen my dad do it a bunch, and I think this is the part where he swears. So I'm going to bounce right now and go over to the other booth.
Yeah, this is the part where he starts yelling at me because I didn't get him the right whatever. So I'm going to go somewhere else. Yeah, but there was at least a 60% majority of female students to male students there. Those kids were a bit more engaged than some I've seen in the past in that event, but it was still, man, the ladies were out front. They were asking questions. They all got their hands up at the same time and they're in it. So it ties right in line perfectly with what I've said all along. This business is about 65% women, female buyers, single females or female couples. Those are our two largest demographics. And cis couples after that. And then I would say singles and then empty nester retirees, kind of in that pecking order. So to see, the ladies that are stepping up to the plate and asking questions about how do I become involved in the construction trades? I want to I want to come work for you. I want to build tiny houses. I want to be a welder. I want to be a home builder. I want to be an electrician. I say, don't wait. Because if you want to be a welder, with a ratio of 1 to 10 retirees to replacement employees coming in the next decade, that math equates to name your price, doesn't it?
Sure does.
You're very, very high demand, and if you're good at your job, you can write your own ticket anywhere in the world. It's that simple. And when I said that, I say that to a lot of high school kids. And I always see 3 or 4 ladies' eyes just kind of light up like, ooh.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that, you know. So hopefully I'm changing that tidal wave of people exiting the industry, and we're putting it in with a fresher, younger, more diverse workforce, because I love it. Female welders here kill it. We've had a handful, and we do our very best to scoop up everyone that can weld we can get a hold of, because they're really good at the job. You know, it's not it would be stigmatized as a very heavy physical sort of job, a lot of labor where you got to lift things and big hammers and all that. And it's not a blacksmith, you know, you're, you know,
we have lifting equipment, you know, there is stuff that, but it's interesting because I think that a lot of that, maybe the reason you've had such great success with them is they approach their work with the same way they approach the questions, with direct inquisitive interest. And there's no more valuable quality in a potential employee than someone that is interested in what they're doing, inquisitive about how to do it better, and also motivated by understanding how doing both of those things can also improve their prospects in the future.
I define that as a self-starter.
For sure.
Right? I need the knowledge. I need to know what to do with the knowledge. I need to know how to go out and get paid for the knowledge I have. That's a self-starter. And you're right. They have the ladies have a bit more finesse, you know, around a problem. They're not going to just reach for the bigger hammer and caveman the thing, right? So they're gonna figure out how to cat burglar it, not caveman it. And the touch, I know it sounds weird, but a lot of TIG or MIG, stick even, but the touch of the hand, that's very much
delicate.
It's if you're a lady with a lady's touch, you've got an advantage in the welding trade. It's just that simple. And I'm excited to see, maybe another 10 years from now, it'll have been overrun like nursing by the ladies, and I'll go, I did that. You know, I led the charge. We filled in the gap. So wrap it up with me on the last two things that you think every tiny houser should know to not be a part of or to stay away from, two negatives that originate or emanate from the tiny house world.
I think that one place that, now that the number of kind of tiny house shows has kind of dissipated, you know, there's fewer of them.
We've thinned the herd a bit. Yeah.
I think that you've just heard me talk about empowerment. I think it's super important, but I think also the understanding that there are also components within a build that if they're beyond you don't monkey with them. You know, there's, you know, when you don't
just don't, man.
There's a lot of things, you know, we've got explosive gases, we've got, you know, electrical work, plumbing work, you know, there's just a lot of, if there's something is beyond you, hire a competent trade or company to build it for you.
Would you say that may be endemic from you know, the build process doesn't take 5 days, it doesn't take 7 days in most cases? Extreme Makeover Home Edition is certainly the exception, because I called you on that. I was like, did you guys really? And you're like, yeah, man, 4.5 days. There's just an army of people flying around.
Yeah, you were like, was it a week? I'm like, it was actually 4.5 days, regardless of size.
Oh God, that's insanity.
Years from my life sapped away.
Yeah, you're only 26, you said, but I mean, it was hard on you. It aged you, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
I'm catching up to you. I'm 25, but the tiny house business it ages you. Yeah, like
I think that, and again, I am a strong proponent of empowering people to be involved in their projects, but make sure that you also understanding your limits, also from a very real like safety standpoint, just making sure you're not going to set yourself up for, you know, catastrophic failure.
Right.
And I think that entering things with kind of doing a lot of both research and due diligence. Stay in a tiny house. There are a lot of them out there now for rent.
Sure.
And not even necessarily on wheels, but just stay in a small space.
Mm-hmm.
Experience it. You know, the one great thing about having this Airbnb, this burgeoning Airbnb market, is that there are a lot of opportunities to stay in homes. You don't, and you can look at them and go, I like this, I don't like this. These are things I like about the quality of this house, or this thing's a dog. I don't like the way this was built out.
You test drive a car before you drive it, don't, or before you buy it, don't you?
100%. I don't, and this is my long kind of word soupy way of getting into, like, just do your research and get familiar with kind of what's involved, because we've had clients that have especially around COVID and all that, like, just sprinted into into tiny home ownership very quickly. And I think that it creates challenges for them and us, in terms of they get into their home and they're like, oh man, I was really smaller than I kind of expected, and and I'm really not moving it as often as I thought. That's where we spend a good portion of our time kind of equal parts kind of education, setting expectations, and a little bit of marital therapy to thrown into boot.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it's
Yes.
it's take your time, do your research, get familiar with what's going to be involved, and because it can be much like kind of the first time you own a boat and you go to back it down the boat ramp. I can remember
I don't want to talk about it.
one of the most fraught moments my wife and I had was with a used boat we bought, and we were backing it into the lake. I can backing it down, it was fine. Bang, in the water. Got it down there, now we got people stacked up, and it wouldn't start.
Oh no.
Wouldn't start. And so I kind of drifted out of the way, kind of moored over here.
Yeah.
People look at me like, you suck, you amateur.
Yeah, of course. You're getting all the stink eye and the side eye from people.
You've also got the kind of, you and your spouse are kind
Oh
of,
boy, yeah.
all that she's got her, ready to be in the sun and out in the lake, and I can't even get the boat started. And it's do some research, try on the shoes, walk around them a little bit, because
that's right.
That also, your initial experience, whether it's towing yourself. And again, I've already talked about being a big proponent of contract haulers and hot shots. You will find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
In terms of size, in terms of features, in terms of whether I haul it myself or not, and where I'm going to live, that will speak to you. And that's one of the things that's really special about it, because it's a type of home ownership that can be personalized to a degree that it's really hard to put words on.
Well said. Yeah, that's a good way to tie that up. I 100% agree with what you say, that you can take that house. I mean, we're not building space shuttles here. It's a rectangle, they're relatively the same size and shape, they move around a little bit, but overall the aesthetic is what changes, not the dimensions necessarily. And just like going to an art store and you walk down the oil painting aisle, and there's all the canvases. You got 8x12s, you got 12x18s, you got 24x36s, and they're all the same size relative. And they're all basically a blank canvas, aren't they? That somebody's going to paint a masterpiece on, whatever that masterpiece is for that person. Not every canvas is going to end up looking like the same picture, because not every artist wields the brush the same way. And
every painting ends up in the Louvre.
That's a fact. Yeah. Excuse me. So, my wife told me a funny story when she's just in the Louvre a couple weeks ago, and they were in the Renaissance room, I believe, with lots and lots and lots of Jesus Christ, and it was really kind of, it was almost borderline disturbing for our 20-year-old. She was like, "What's going on? I don't understand." It's like, here's happy Jesus, here's not so happy Jesus, here's Jesus that's come back from the dead, and there's so it was you said not everything ends up in the Louvre, and I'm like, I wouldn't be so sure. There's a lot of stuff in the Louvre that doesn't need to be there. So I digress, but that's probably, yeah, I'll build on your list, but I'll just restate what you already did. You can make a tiny house whatever you want it to be for you. And I wouldn't necessarily put that in the worst possible thing that you have to know, but it certainly can become a really bad thing if you don't have the right house around you, huh?
Correct. 100%. That's really That's kind of, I appreciate you kind of summarizing it that way, because it really, I, you know, I have seen people, less so, we haven't had our clients, no one really jumps out, but I've seen people in the wrong, clearly in the wrong home.
Yeah.
They've come to us asking for, like, what can I do?
What can I do to save this?
You could probably sell it. And
Yeah.
in some cases, it's like, you should probably sell it.
Turn it into a rental.
Yes.
I think we're about out of time here, so I'm going to wrap it up really quick. It's been a fantastic conversation with you, as always, my friend. Keep doing what you do down there in Austin, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear more, please feel free to offer up any suggestions in the comments below for us. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the content that you enjoy. It really helps us grow. You can also find us at trailermadetrailers.com and on Facebook and Instagram and wherever you download your podcasts. As always, thank you so much for your continued support.